what I found interesting about the UK, and there's a number of things currently going on in the UK, looking at the way chemical legislation and chemical restrictions are happening in the UK. So there were discussions during Brexit whether to align with the EU or not align with the EU, also with plans, of course, to look into that after a while. And there has been a release of a new environmental plan, or an updated environmental plan, a revision of the environmental plan, which has been published in the beginning of December by UK. And what they looked into now is again aligning closer to EU legislation. And of course, during Brexit discussions, understandably, there was the wish and the intent to have a look into chemical legislation specifically for the UK and maybe digress from what EU is doing. And that new environmental improvement plan is looking into, again, aligning more closely with the EU, maybe finding a process of making sure that things are more closely aligned again, which will make it, of course, easier for industries, both in the EU as well in the UK, to make sure that there is a more harmonized legislation. And we have cases already where this is happening. So Switzerland, for example, is in many, many cases aligning very closely to the EU to make sure that there's a harmonized way of looking into chemicals, of regulating things, of assessing the harmfulness of substances, if you want that way, and restrictions in the same fashion. And I think looking at it from an industry perspective, I think this is a good way of tackling things and of doing things, because at the end of the day, we are very close still from a market perspective. And there was actually a fear because UK has not kept up, so to say, with some of the assessment for newer chemicals that were brought onto the market post-Brexit. So there was the fear in the UK that they might still be limited, so to say, to the older chemicals because there was just no assessment and no data available in the UK market, so that they couldn't use more recent developments and more recent products because there was a lack of data. So again, it comes back to the data, and then of course there is a value in making sure that there is data shared and data accessible, and data that can be used and reused without having similar but still differing requirements across borders. So there is a clear intent to harmonize it. Again, there's still details and the whole things are still being figured out, but I think it will be of value to, as I said, both UK as well as EU companies to make sure that there is a closer alignment again. And it will also make processes in the legislative area faster